Thank you for calling the Drip Doctors. My name is Emma. How can we assist you with your plumbing needs today?
Hey, I have a problem with my kitchen sink and I just need someone to come out and have a look. Do you guys do that?
I'm sorry to hear that you're having trouble with your kitchen sink. Yes, we can certainly help with that. Could you please tell me the suburb you're located in?
Yeah, I'm in Belmont.
Thank you for that information. Is this a residential or commercial property?
Yeah, it's just my house, so it's a residential.
Thank you for confirming that it's a residential property. Based on your description, we can certainly help with your kitchen sink issue. Could you please let me know what time works best for you to have someone come out?
The best time for me would be, say, 1 p.m. tomorrow.
Let me check the availability for 1 p.m. tomorrow for you. One moment, please. Give me a moment. Unfortunately, 1 p.m. tomorrow is not available. However, we can offer you alternative time slots at 9 a.m., 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Which of these times would work best for you?
11 a.m. would work fine.
This will just take a sec. Could I please have your name?
Yeah, it's Luke.
Thank you, Luke. Could you please provide your email address?
Yeah, it's lukechaffee@gmail.com.
Thank you, Luke. Just to confirm, your name is Luke Chaffee. Your email address is lukechaffee@gmail.com, and your address is still needed. Could you please provide your address?
Yeah, it's 12 High Street.
Thank you, Luke. Just to confirm, your name is Luke Chaffee. Your email address is lukechaffee@gmail.com, and your address is 12 High Street. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Thank you for confirming, Luke. I will now proceed to book your service for 11 a.m. tomorrow at 12 High Street. Just to clarify, the service will be for your kitchen sink issue. I'll take care of that now, just a sec. Your service has been successfully booked, Luke. A technician will be out to address your kitchen sink issue at 11 a.m. tomorrow at 12 High Street. Thank you for choosing the Drip Doctors. Is there anything else I can assist you with?
No, that's it. Thanks.
You're welcome, Luke. If you have any more questions or need assistance in the future, don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. for your kitchen sink service.
Thanks. Okay, and so jumping into Google Calendar here, we can see in the calendar that there's an event now called Kitchen Sink Issue. It's got Luke Chaffee. It's got my details here all in the description. It's got my address here so that they can quickly look it up and just see. But what we did in that process was firstly answer questions, confirm that they can actually do the service that I'm looking for. And then beyond that, they went through and figured out, am I in the right suburb? Can I actually get that time that's available? So in this case, I gave it a time that I had already blocked out previously in the calendar myself. And it saw that, so it did not allow me to go forward with that time. It then suggested some alternative times that were free in the calendar already. And when I confirmed that, asked for my name, email, you saw everything. But yeah, that's the whole process it goes through. It's able to go through that automatically, get from the start point of taking the inbound call and going through and actually producing the end booking in the calendar. So let's talk about the benefits of a system like this. Look, obviously the main one, the biggest one, it's your 24/7 availability, never missing a call or a booking. With an AI assistant, you can just have someone there all the time, be able to take in that incoming call. You might be busy, you might be on a job. This just takes care of that for you. Along with that, it's smart scheduling, it's good calendar management. Because it has some automation around the whole booking in the calendars, being able to see and actually pull in that information, it just sort of takes away that need to, someone contacts us and then you need to call them back and see, can we fit you in at this time? Because that's all taken away, it just allows it to go through and just smoothly come through. It's a much better system. It also allows for that instant gratification, instant answers to questions that they might have. Someone might just have this really poignant, need to know this piece of information before I can begin. And by having this knowledge base, by having this information that's sitting behind it, it allows a consumer to just get that instant information that they need and be able to make a choice and decision right then and there. And Finally, look, it frees up your time of your team. No longer do you need to be calling back, no longer needing to be able to go and figure out the schedule yourself. This just takes away all that need of the team calling and just handling that conversation. It allows you to just spend your time in the areas that actually matter. Okay, so let's chat about the actual flow of the system. Now, this is the overarching everything that happens throughout the whole flow. Obviously, quite small, hard to see what's going on. So I'm going to break this down into just a few different sections to sort of explain it and go through it in a little bit of detail. So firstly, we have over the side here that the user calls the company. This is the starting point. Now, obviously, user calls a phone number, and what happens there is the AI assistant is set up to take that inbound call and answer it for them. Now, the first thing it does is it basically intros itself, saying, "How can I help you?" And so what can happen here is a few different things. But typically what's going to happen is the user's going to ask, or the customer, sorry, is going to ask some sort of questions. So they might have questions about like availability or like what services can you help with? Or they might even say, "I have this problem. Can you help me figure out, do you actually do that?" So that's where it will continue to answer questions until the user is indicating that they want to book a service. So when they want to book a service, there are a few steps that we need to take. Now, firstly, we need to ask for the specific issue. Now, we're going to have a set of sort of services that we offer. So we need to make sure that we check against those to see, can we actually offer that service? And look, if we're unable to service them, then it goes back to the whole answering questions process. So it will say, "Sorry, we can't help you with that service. Is there something else that we can help with?" And it will continue then that cycle until they say, "Oh, I need help with something else that we help with." And it will go through this same sort of process. So it'll ask for the specific issue first. It'll be asking for the suburb that they're in. And again, we need to make sure that they're in a serviceable area. So there is a list of suburbs that any company may be able to service. I'm not willing to drive, say, an hour or 2 hours away. And so we need to make sure that we stay within that area. Assuming that they're in a serviceable area, then we're going to ask them if it's a residential or commercial property. And then finally ask them for, is there an ideal day and time that they'd like to book in for? Once we have all that information pulled in from them, we're going to trigger the check availability process. Now, what this process is doing is it's basically, firstly, looking at a calendar to see, is that time slot available? If it's available, then great, it'll continue on. But if it's not, then what it's going to do is it's going to find alternative times in the calendar. So it's going to look in the calendar for that date that they're looking at and try and identify some alternative times for them and suggest those back to the user. The user then may choose to take one of those times, and then great, we continue forward. But if they choose no, that none of those times work and they've given some sort of alternative time, then it's going to go back to the start of the checking availability process. So if I had said I want a 10 a.m. appointment and it's not available, and I've suggested 1, 2, 3 p.m. and then the user said, "No, I can't do that. Let's go 7 p.m. tomorrow," then it'll go back and recheck and go through that whole process again. The ultimate goal out of that is to obtain then to move forward to actually booking in. Now, to book in, we need to obtain the name, email, and the address of the property. And once we've received those, we're just going to repeat back to the user to say, "Hey, this is the information that I've captured from you. Can you just confirm this is correct?" And if it's not correct, the user can correct them and we'll get the updated details and confirm again. And once it's been confirmed, then what we're doing is we're triggering the booking service, triggering the service booking function, in which that process, it's creating a calendar event. So it's going to create the calendar event with all the details that we've captured throughout that conversation. And it's going to respond back to the user saying, "Hey, we've booked that in for you. We're good to go. Is there anything else I can help you with?" And that's the whole flow then of the process. And that's all done automatically, no human intervention, just completely done with an AI assistant. Okay, so let's talk through the actual pieces that we have to hand. Now, firstly, we have the knowledge base here. The knowledge base itself is just a source of all information about the company that the AI assistant can draw upon to answer any questions that a user might be asking. So this document needs to be quite comprehensive. You don't want to fill it with too much information, as it may get a bit confused as to which information to pull at times. However, giving a great overview of everything within the business where a user might ask questions is really what you're trying to go for. So let me just take you through the document that I have to hand, and you can adapt it for yourself. So firstly, I have an introduction. This I see being sort of like almost like an about section from your website. It just gives a quick brief overview to the AI to be able to help answer any sort of general overarching questions that the user might be asking. Beyond that then, we have things like business information, company name, email, phone, that sort of stuff. In this case, we have the service areas. So because the plumbing businesses only service specific areas, we want to make sure that the user that they've called from, the area is somewhere that we can actually service. So I've listed out the different areas that this company, or this fictional company, will be servicing. We have then also the business hours, and then the specific services that are offered. So in this case, the specific services, I've provided both the headline title of it, but alongside that, a brief description, just in case someone asks a question about that specific service, it can help sort of facilitate an answer back. If you needed to have more comprehensive information about each specific service, look, you could provide a lot more in this document, but this gives a great overarching starting point towards any sort of conversation. So we have all the services listed there. I then have the team members, and I've included these here just so that when the AI responds with, say, fixing a hot water service or installing it even, it can reference that Sam is going to be the one doing it because he has the specialty in that area. Or if it was a leak in a pipe, then we know Alex is going to do it. Now, I know it doesn't really matter to an end user who comes out and does the job, but it gives that little personal touch to the end user to know, oh, this person's coming out to do my job. And then beyond that, we have FAQs. And these are going to be common questions that someone might ask in the phone call. And just we want to make sure that we're able to answer those sort of questions. This list could be quite long at times, but this is a great starting point. Okay, so moving along to Vapi now. Vapi is where we're able to handle all the actual specifics of the conversation and getting that all set up. So in here we can see that we've got Emma the drip doctor. We can see the costing behind it, but more importantly here, we can see the whole system prompt and what's going to happen when someone calls. So firstly, we have a first message here, which is just a nice pleasantry, asking, basically introducing, and then asking how we can actually help. Beyond that then, we have the actual system prompt, and this is effectively a big area of instruction to sort of explain how the AI assistant should be used. Now, in theory, you could leave that empty and it will have a conversation, but the conversation won't be great and it won't be targeted towards your business at all. So what this area is really giving a lot of instruction to it. So within here, we just define things like the role, and that is to just explain the use case that we're actually working with at the moment, but more importantly then, the task itself. So in this case, we're asking for them to help customers with their plumbing needs, making sure that it answers any questions they might have, trying to book the customer in for a service, and if they want to book, then they need to follow through a few different steps. So firstly, we need to know the specific problem. We then need to know what suburb they're in, if it's a residential or commercial property, and finally the time and day that they want. Now we ask these because there's a few different reasons. Firstly, if it's a problem that we can't actually solve, then we need to let them know that. And similar for the suburb. If it's a suburb that we don't service, like we specified in the knowledge base, then we can't help, unfortunately. So those are a few steps that we need to go through before actually taking through and checking to see if that time that they suggested is available. So assuming we get through all that and they're fine, they're able to book in. So assuming we get through all that and no issues with the suburb, no issues with the servicing, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running the check availability function, which is a tool built within Vapi that connects to Make. Now, we'll be getting to the tools a little bit later, but for now, what this is doing is it's taking the requested time that the user asked for and basically checking to see, is that time available? If a time is suggested by them is outside hours of operation, we just need to remind the customer, hey, we're actually not able to help you at that time. But if they did select one within the business hours, we go through, check and see if it's free. If that time isn't available, it will go through and suggest some alternative times to the user. And if an alternative time is chosen, then great, we'll keep going through with that. User can throw another time date out there and it will just keep on checking the availability to see, is it actually able to book in for that time? So once they've agreed on a time slot that is free, we need to get from them their name and also their email address and also their actual physical address. Once they've provided all that information, the AI system will go back and confirm those details with the user just in case they misheard something. And once that's been confirmed, it will go through and run the book service function, which it actually goes through and books it in for them. So what this is all doing is basically allowing a person to no longer need to be on the phone and be able to replace that with an AI assistant that can work 24/7 and handle these queries for them. So moving on, basically that whole section of the task is one of the main big areas. Beyond that, then we have some specifics, which will basically be for this specific use case. Here's some special instructions to keep in mind. We then have a full example of how the conversation may occur. And this whole conversation here, you can actually have multiple versions of this. So you could have a successful one, you could have one where, they suggested a time, but I want to get another time. You could have one where it just flows through normally like this. But basically each example you add in increases the cost to actually run the AI assistant. So keeping it at one example that sort of encompasses the main flow that you want to work through is typically what I've been working with, but you can absolutely add more, which will give much more assurity behind this is definitely the flow it's going to work through when it gets to this specific situation. But yeah, this entirely is just the conversation as it would occur. At the very bottom then, we have notes around staying on track and making sure that it actually handles the conversation like a normal conversation as well. So that's the system prompt, and look, it's pretty complex. It has a lot of detail inside it. One area that we move to next then is the knowledge base. So we obviously before had our Google Sheet, which I'll bring up quickly. We had our Google Sheet here. With the Google Sheet, I have saved that as a PDF. And then within Vapi here, there's a file section, which is basically just a list of files that are accessible in your account. So in this case, I have the Drip Doctors knowledge base. You just simply upload it into the files section. Then within your assistant area, you can just select the knowledge base on the side here. And that way we've connected that brain up to the actual system prompt so that it knows all that information now about that company and is able to answer all the specific questions about it. Okay, so that's the knowledge base. Moving across to now the tools. The tools within Vapi are the area in which we're defining those functions. So we saw in the system prompt, we had a function which was check availability, and then we also had book service. Now this is the area in which we're able to take the ability to run some sort of piece of code and connect it to an external server or do some sort of calculation. And there's a number of different ways to do that. In my case, what I'm doing is I have a check availability tool here, which it's integrated with make.com, which is going to be able to allow me to run through a workflow and get some sort of response back, which is basically, here's what I want the response from the chatbot to be. So in this case, we have the details is the tool name is just check availability. The description, I just basically describe what this tool is doing. And then within here, we just have one property set up, which is the time. And the time is the time that the user has said to the AI assistant. So that might be tomorrow at 6 a.m. or it might be Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Who knows? It could be mid-afternoon, whatever they want to say. But that is the property that needs to be sent through then along with the call to actually then get a response back and be able to check to see if that time's available. Along with the check availability tool, there's also a book service tool. And this one is a little bit more detailed to it, but not a whole lot more. In this case, it's a tool that is to be used for booking a service after they've checked the time slots available. In this case, we have a number of different pieces of information that need to be sent through. So in this case, we have things like name, time, email address, service that they're actually doing, so like leaking pipes, and the property type. This all is information that the end plumber needs to know, and so will be included in the end output as well. So that's kind of it for Vapi. There's nothing too much further in Vapi itself around the tools. We're now going to jump across to Make to get into the actual workflow side. Okay, so within Make here, we have two main scenarios that we're working with. One is the check availability and the other is book service. Yes, they match up to the tools within Vapi. It's as simple as that. So what we have in here is, firstly, this is the more complex of the two. This is the check availability scenario. What this scenario is doing is it's firstly looking to see, has someone made a call from Vapi? If there's a call from a specific URL which Vapi has access to, then it's going to begin this chain. So from that, what we're doing then is, firstly, we need to determine the timestamp. So as we said, a user might say tomorrow at 6 a.m. or tomorrow mid-afternoon. They can say it in so many different ways. So what we need to get back is a universal timestamp that is usable in Google Calendars. So in this case, we have our system prompt, which is basically saying, hey, someone's requested a meeting. This is the time and the date that they've said. We need it back in this specific format here. And then below that, we have the actual specific user's value that they sent through. In this case, I'm also sending through, here's the current time, and that just allows for that whole tomorrow afternoon. It can know, oh, here's the current time. Okay, so tomorrow afternoon will be this time. And so that will provide us back a result in this format, which is what we need. So with that information then, we're able to go to Google Calendars and say, is this time actually free? And so here we're sending through firstly the minimum time, which is the date time stamp. So that is saying the specific time that we want. And then in this case, we're adding 60 minutes. So all appointments here are set to be 60 minutes. And so it's going to add 60 minutes just to set, here's the time frame, here's the time slot that we want to book out. Is this actually available? So in this case, then we're also connecting to this specific calendar, but you could do things like connecting it to just specific people based on the service. So say you want to split Sam and Alex's time based on which service is actually being booked in. It's absolutely something that you could be doing. With that information then, we're going through and just routing the call depending on if the time is available or not. So within the available route, what we're doing then is we're returning a result, which is just saying basically, great, the time slot you've selected is actually available. Let me go ahead and do you want to book that in? If though that time is not available, it's going to go through this fallback sequence. And this fallback is basically saying, let's find an alternative time for you. So within here, firstly, we have the minimum time, which is the current timestamp. So again, today's date at this time. And then we're adding on 24 hours. And what this is doing is basically seeing over the next 24 hours, what are all the time slots that are busy? Because with that information that shows these are all the busy time slots, we're going to be able to then find out which ones are not busy and which ones are actually free to have a booking. So within here then, we have this little piece which requires converting all those bookings over that time and turning them into a usable format for OpenAI to actually make a call and say, hey, where can I get that information? So in here, we have this OpenAI part, which is find alternative times. So what this is it's basically going to find alternative times for us. Now, what this is going to do is basically it's going to take in the string of information that we have from all the calendar lookup that we did before. So it looked up the events in the 24 hours, turned it into a string. So now what we're doing is we're basically saying, hey, we need you to find an alternative 60-minute appointment. Here's what you need to do. You need to make sure that you do not recommend a time within these busy periods. And here's the time that was already not available. Can you please go through and find a recommendation for a time that's close by? So in this case, we've given it again the today, right now, the time, so that it's able to take that and work in where it requires. And we've also defined, hey, don't suggest any time before 9 or after 5, just to stay within those business hours. We're going to ask it for 3 alternative times and making sure that those times absolutely are available before suggesting them. So what that's going to come out with is 3 times, 3 dates, 3 times that it thinks is available and could be useful for the user. It's then going to take that output and it's going to generate a response. And all this is doing is just making that response a bit nicer, because right now what we have is like 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 p.m. What we actually want it to say is something more like, unfortunately that time's not available, but however, we do have times available at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and 12 p.m. Just making it that little bit nicer. So that's all that this is doing. It's basically saying, hey, here's an example of what we want you to bring out. Can you turn these available time slots into that end output? And with that end output, we then send that back to the AI assistant to say back to the user. And so like we talked about before, the end user gets those times back, or they might already have the original ask time was fine. What we then need to do is we need to book in that service. So the AI assistant then is going through asking for that information that we're missing, like the name, email, and the address of the property. And what that's going to do is it's going to send that through to Make into this book service call. So firstly, again, we have this Vapi connection that's going to allow us to send us a call to a specific URL that Vapi knows and send it into Make. With that, we then firstly need to do the determine timestamp again, because what could have been decided is, say, 11 a.m. tomorrow, or it might actually be a specific date plus the time. But the general output of the AI assistant at this point is more conversational. So it is more likely to be 10 a.m. tomorrow or later today. So what we need to do is run that same determine timestamp function again, just so that we can get that same end output required for Google Calendars, which is this date, year, month, day, hour, minute, seconds, time. So with that information created, we actually have everything we need to create the booking. So within here, within Google Calendars, we're going to be creating an event. In here, the event name that I've given is the service plus the name of the user. So that would be like leaking pipes, Luke Chaffee, something like that. It's not an all-day event. It has a specific start time and it goes for 1 hour. Beyond that then, in the description section of the Google Calendar event itself, here I'm giving it the name, email, address, service, and the property. And that's just so all that information is nicely in one spot for the plumber if they needed to refer back to anything. Along with that, the location is automatically set based on the address given, so that they can just see it in there. If they've got a Google phone, they can just go to Google Maps and see it in there. And along with that, I've included adding the attendee. So we're able to provide the name and the email address in, so that the end customer is able to see in their own Google Calendar or whatever service they use, hey, I've got this service, so I can remember, oh, I better be home for that. Beyond that, there's not a whole lot more that's changed. Everything else is sort of the default pieces. Things I did change though is like guest permissions to modify the event, invite others, see a guest list. I've just turned those off because it doesn't make sense in this use case. But there are definitely a lot of options within the Google Calendar creation event to sort of modify it as you need for your own use case. With that event then created, we're going back to Vapi, sending a response saying, hey, that's booked in, we're good to go. And that's sort of it for the tools. And that's about it. Look, it's there's a lot to it. It can get a little bit complex at times. If you start with quite simple, fundamental automations for the AI system to work through, and just simple conversations, it's a great starting point. As you get more complex, obviously it gets a lot harder, and more make connections required, and more just little tools to help the conversation flow a little bit is definitely where it goes. This sort of AI automation is things that I help with companies throughout Australia. Feel free to check out the website aiwise.com.au, which will have more information about what exactly we do. But look, I'm going to keep on creating these, and I'm loving creating these to help others out and just get the information out there. There's a lot of opportunity in AI, and I'd love to see businesses pick it up just a bit more. Cheers.